Hi, my name is Lindsay, and today I'm going to be talking about the Jigsaw strategy. I do want to give you a heads up today that I am going to be applying this instead of to a traditional classroom to my museum, just for a different perspective, and also because this is something I'd actually love to apply to my museum once COVID's over and I can allow students to come back for tours. So here's my SOL. The main focus of this SOL is the student will demonstrate skills for historical thinking, using evidence to draw conclusions and make generalizations. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. I would like to point out for this, I kind of focus on older students because it requires a lot of independent work, looking through the galleries, looking at artifacts, talking in groups. So if I wanted to make this for a younger crowd, I probably would adjust it and bring more volunteers and guides in. So Jigsaw highlights. I want you to kind of visualize this with me for a second. It's a multi-step process. So you start, and I'll kind of walk you through this, but you have two main process areas that are kind of important to think of. It's the home groups and the expert groups. So home groups are what your students start out, the first group that you break your students up in, and they all read material about a main idea that you want to talk about. So for instance, gardening. So you split up your students and they all are in their home groups and they read one reading material, like a paragraph or so about the topic of gardening. After they have done that, then you take a student from each of those groups, those home groups, and create new groups called expert groups. And these are expert groups focus on subcategory ideas of the main idea. So you had your students in their home groups and they talked about gardening. Well, now they're broken up into expert groups and spread out, and then they talk about subcategory ideas like vegetables or fruits. And then after this process is done, they return, after they become expert in their groups, they return back to their home groups and share their new ideas with their other students that are in the home group with them. So here is just the process and how it would look, and I'm also going to show some visuals here in a second, but students would come into the museum, they would meet in the main gallery space. There I would split them into home groups and they would receive reading material about James Monroe because we are the James Monroe Museum. This would be more of just an overview of his life, kind of giving a little background about where he was born, how he grew up, and kind of the different roles he played in, just to give them a main idea of who he was as a person. After this, I would take these home groups and split them up into expert groups. I'd split them up into 3 expert groups. And they would rotate into different, they would all go to a different gallery space and learn about an expert topic, which I'll show here in a second. The way this is going to work is I'm going to time it for 10 minutes, and they're going to get 10 minutes in the gallery space each, and then they will regroup in the main gallery space and talk with their home group and educate everyone on what they learned. So this is where the home group space will be. This is the main gallery. And this is where James Monroe, it kind of goes over an overview of his life. So we would let them read material about an overview of his life in here. And then we'd split up the different expert groups. The different expert groups would be the Revolutionary War. So in this gallery space, the expert group will be learning about James Monroe in the Revolutionary War and where he fought. I would have a short paragraph that would talk about his time in the Revolutionary War, and I'd also tie in an artifact for them to see to just kind of have a visual to connect with the words. The second expert group would be in the Monroe as President room. This room kind of focuses on Monroe as president, his time in office, and some of the things he worked on while he was on office. And once again, I would have a paragraph or reading selection for students to read that kind of overviews this room and some of what we offer in that exhibit space, and have an artifact tied to it as a visual artifact to help them kind of visualize what they're reading. And lastly, I would have students in the American in Paris room, which is Monroe as a diplomat. And once again, I'd offer a reading pamphlet or a reading, strategy for them. A reading option for them to kind of look over about Monroe as a diplomat, and once again tie in an artifact. After that, they would regroup in the main gallery space with their home groups and they would talk. And just as a reminder, I would time it out. I would have a clock and time it for 10 minutes in each space so that they're not, overwhelmed with too much information, but they're not, worried that they don't have enough time. And this is what they would be carrying around with them during this time. I think it's really important to have some type of graphic organizer to help them with this idea. And when I was researching Jigsaw Strategy, they recommended some type of graphic organizer. So I used a jigsaw puzzle. So here would be the main idea. So this would be like some, information they would take down about James Monroe himself in the main gallery space. And then when they're in each gallery space, they would go ahead and take notes on what they learned in the gallery space, and then they would regroup. And the hope would be that they would work together to fill out the rest of the jigsaw puzzle together by learning from their expert that went to that certain room. So, for instance, this would be the Revolutionary War, this would be the diplomat room, this would be the president room, and this might just be, if we had an extra room that would go there. But the hope is that students will be given, each expert will be given a few minutes to talk about what they learned, and the other students will go ahead and jot down notes. And then they'll finish with this assessment, which will be the final product that they would turn in to me as the museum educator to kind of make sure that they understood the whole process and understood the main idea that we were talking about today, which would be learning about James Monroe. So this is just something I, would like to do, and I hope that you like this. I'm open to suggestions or comments. Anything helps. So thank you.